to the PHNX Cardinals podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook. Be sure to download the app today. Get a little excited over there with the music using the code PHNX. That's going to get you $200 in free bets after making your first NFL bet of just $1. Cardinals win 38-13 in their season opener over the Titans. It was a performance that exceeded my expectations. Behind two career performances, Kyler Murray, 21 of 31 or 32. 21 of 32 for 4 touchdowns. That's a career high for him. And then, of course, Chandler Jones with 5 sacks, 3 in just the first quarter of this game.
Definitely. I mean, look, there's words cannot express the excitement of watching them play good, knowing or not knowing if they would play good. But the idea of watching this team come together offensively and defensively, the performance of dominating one of the Mr. 2,000 yards rush of Derrick Henry and shutting him down, coming in off of Mr. Tannehill, who we thought he just got a new contract and he would be able to go out and, with the weapons on the outside, explode against our defensive and our cornerbacks. And we had so many questions, and yet from the start of the game, it looked like we just had all the answers. And I'm really excited about what we saw today. And, look, the performance on both sides of the ball was definitely something I did not expect.
Absolutely. Frank Sanders, Kirsten Susel, Johnny Venerable here, breaking down.
I always forget to introduce us.
Cardinal postgame.
They know us.
Yeah, they do. I would hope so by now. 38-13 the final score. And, yeah, it was maybe best case scenario, knock on wood. We hope Kelvin Beacham's okay. Sure, we can get nitpicky with the penalties, especially in the first quarter. But I think when you look around the NFL landscape of teams that are specifically struggling offensively, I mean, it took the Cardinals roughly, 10, 12 minutes of play to get it going. They scored all 38 points through the first 3 quarters of action today. And, before we start with the offense, I want to flip the script. And I think everybody around the Valley needs to give Vance Joseph a huge pat on the back. I know people were skeptical defensively. Could they hold up? The secondary, which has a lot of concerns. You let Patrick Peterson depart. Malcolm Butler's not around. That didn't really matter at all today, and we've talked about it consistently. Pressure in the front 4 and in your front 7 erases near all mistakes in the secondary. And goodness, you talk about Chandler Jones. I think J.J. Watt as well, asserting himself on the line of scrimmage. He had a couple nice tackles for loss, especially on those first couple drives where the Titans could not get Derrick Henry going. That set the tone. They gave the Cardinals ample time to get going offensively and give them credit. They eventually did. Cliff and the offense began to settle down. They put points on the board in a big way. But Vance Joseph, to me, has been, for whatever reason, a punching bag since he arrived here. All they did last year was get better defensively. They add J.J. Watt. They've got some nice younger pieces like a Michael Dogby on the defensive line. Isaiah Simmons, to me, had his best complete game as a pro, silenced a lot of critics who thought he was not physical enough in the run game, had the lone interception. I just can't say enough great things about this defense.
Yeah, and I think with about 10 minutes left in the game, they had their second-string defensive front out there. Michael Dogby gets a sack, 6 total sacks from them. They brought the pressure, and we all knew that was going to be key to getting a win. But there wasn't at any point, and I was one of those skeptics to see how the defense would respond, especially with the Malcolm Butler situation and Zaven Collins. I knew that he had a great preseason. He's been great in practice, in camp, but when it comes to a real game, I just didn't know if he was going to be able to perform. And so with all of my concerns were kind of thrown out the window after the first quarter, I was like, dang, they're okay.
Yeah,
they didn't miss a beat.
Look, that defensive front, and I you know what, we go back and we say just adding pieces creates the balance. And what we had the opportunity to see with Chandler Jones and most of his sacks. But if you look at the other side of the field, or just on the other side of the field, and watch what they're doing to J.J. Watts, how many times they had to double team him, which freed up one-on-one opportunities with Chandler Jones. And I'm thinking, like, why would you just go one-on-one with Chandler and you wouldn't allow J.J., who was the one that's not as healthier and who's a little older than Chandler? Why wouldn't you double team Chandler? Because he's got the hot stick right now. But they were so afraid of knowing their history of what happened with and how he played at Houston and how he dominated the game in Houston. So we're just going to go one-on-one with Chandler, and they let that happen. And I'm glad that they did, because then you see Chandler gets 5 sacks. He goes out and does something, absolutely just takes control of the defensive line. And everyone on defense benefited from that. And everyone that was a part of the game had a chance to see what it's like to go on the road and get a win in a hostile environment, and yet know that we can go out and dominate. And that, to me, set the tone in a lot of ways that allowed everyone else to go out and just play. And it was absolutely beautiful to watch.
It's like pick your poison with J.J. Watt and Chandler Jones. Frank, I think you had a bold prediction that
Very bold.
That J.J. Watt was going to get 2 or 3 sacks this game, which I was like, man, if he got 3 sacks, that'd be great. Never in a million years did I think that Chandler Jones would get 5 of them. I actually saw this. Okay, so I think she won like Fan of the Year. She's a huge super fan. Her name is, I think, Susan. So she tweeted this out. So this is coming from a fan on Twitter that's at the game. But she said Steve Keim came over to Chandler to congratulate him, and Chandler patted Keim's pockets. If that's true, that's really funny. Cameron Cox of 12 News, he's also on the game. He tweeted out a photo of team owner Michael Bidwell coming over to talk to Chandler Jones. So he garnered a lot of attention. We know that he's playing for some money and a long-term deal, and he came out and didn't skip a beat.
I think everybody needs to calm down. The people in our mentions and DMs, we love the interaction, but to worry about Chandler Jones' contract situation, this is what the Cardinals wanted to have happen, whether or not it was intended this way. They wanted Chandler Jones to be motivated on a 1-year contract. He felt disrespected. 2 years ago, best sack artist in the NFL, borderline defensive player of the year. Last year, through 5 games, had 1 sack, didn't look great, got hurt, and he wanted more guaranteed money. And the Cardinals said, you know what? Let's see how things go this year. We've got to reallocate some things. The budget is tighter, pandemic cap. Let's talk after the season. He didn't like that, supposedly requested a trade. Still was a professional, showed up this offseason, and you're reaping the benefits now of a man who is enthralled with getting himself, rightfully so, a new contract and reestablishing himself as the league's best sack artist. 5 sacks. We know Michael Strahan's record for sacks in a season is 21.5. Chandler almost broke it 2 years ago. Now you have the extra game. 17 weeks in the NFL season. I don't think it's crazy to start thinking that way. But here's what I would suggest to Cardinal fans fretting about Chandler Jones and his money. At the very least, I promise you, Michael Bidwell will not let him hit the open market. They will franchise him this offseason, will make him the highest paid player at his position, if not for a single season, assuming he continues down this route. There's no scenario come 2022 he's not playing in a Cardinal uniform.
There is no one more hungrier and better than watching a guy play for a contract year.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen more Pro Bowl guys. I've seen more guys get to the Pro Bowl on a 1-year deal than guys who got 4-year contracts and he had been a Pro Bowler for 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Once they get that money, something about it changes it. I don't know what changes the narrative. I guess it's the other guys around you that has to play better and have to get better so they can get their money back too as well. But look, hey, Chandler's a player, and I'm thinking we talked about. I said I think what JJ get 2 or 3 sacks this year, this game, and in truth, I think when we get a chance to go back and we break down the film, we'll see how many times because JJ was double teamed, Chandler was 1-on-1, and how he could just dominate and manipulate the situation. And to me, I'm excited about what he did. I mean, that to me, performance was like, this is a money moment. And if he's patting anybody's pocket, let me tell you something. I wouldn't be surprised if his contract didn't hit the table in a couple of weeks.
People forget, too, he had a season-ending injury last year. I thought one of the cool moments, his first strip sack was recovered by Corey Peters, who also had a season-ending injury. He almost took it in for the touchdown, but his knee was down just before the goal line. But I thought that combination right there off the bat, I was like, dang, 2 guys that, they were injured last year.
They weren't factors, unfortunately. It could be one of Steve Keim's shrewdest pickups. Jordan Phillips Insurance, when they brought back Corey Peters in August, Corey had taken and had gotten interest from other teams. Of course, wanted to come back and finish his career whenever it chooses to end in Arizona, and plays, I want to say like at least 60% of the snaps today after not having any kind of off-season conditioning program with the team. Shows you what kind of physical shape he keeps himself in. But that's a great point. I mean, last year it was all Hassan Reddick, right? And Hassan Reddick's allowed to leave. People, including myself, I didn't love that decision. Homegrown player.
I was blown away by that.
And all you get now is you get Chandler Jones reaffirming himself as the league's top sack artist after missing last year. Corey Peters is in. Now you have J.J. Watt whenever they do get Jordan Phillips back. And then I think the presence of the inside linebackers, Isaiah Simmons, Xavier Collins, and Jordan Hicks, what they were able to do to this run game. Derrick Henry, 17 carries for 58 yards.
Wow.
No touchdowns. I even thought with that Tannehill scramble on, I think it was third down on the goal line. Corey Peters, by the way, was held on that play. Even with the touchdown-giving drive that they had, I still think this defense came away with so many more positives, silenced so many doubters on everything, whether it's can Isaiah Simmons be physical, Chandler Jones, can he bounce back, is the Cardinals' defensive line for real, what's going on with the secondary. All of it was quieted today.
So our king of the game is a clear one. That would be Chandler Jones. Again, 5 sacks, including 3 in just the first quarter. A couple of forced fumbles, both leading to touchdowns. 4 tackles for loss. Just an incredible performance from him. And if you haven't downloaded the DraftKings Sportsbook app, the #1 sportsbook in America, you still have time to do that using the code PHNX. You're going to get $200 in free bets after placing a $1 bet on any NFL game. You still got time to do that. We still have the Sunday night game and tomorrow's Monday night game. So be sure to download that app using the code PHNX if you haven't done that yet. So, all right, defense outperformed our expectations. Offense did too as well. This is the first time that DeAndre Hopkins scored 2 touchdowns as a Cardinal. So there's that. Christian Kirk had 2 incredible touchdown catches. And again, Kyler Murray, 21 of 32, 4 touchdowns. He has never thrown 4 touchdowns in his career.
Look, everything that I watched today is definitely – look, I said last week, I said we have to see Cliff do a couple of things. And in one of them, he had to – we knew for a fact he had to be creative. Can he take the talent that we've given him and not just do the status quo of what he did with the first couple of years of, the college offense, but he had to become more creative. This game, we saw DeAndre Hopkins on the inside. We saw motion from different receivers. We didn't see that last year. A lot of guys kind of stood stagnant.
Great point.
They stood in one spot, and that was a situation where you knew exactly where they were going. And that, to me, I thought was absolutely fabulous. I think he definitely improved in that area. So I'm giving Cliff a big, round of applause. You can see the little round right there. It's a tiny round, but it's definitely a round of applause. And I thought that was absolutely fabulous. Again, we're talking about our defense. Defense was magnificent, but our offensive plays, the guys that made players complimentary of Ronald Moore, and then you also have A.J. Green. That causes one-on-ones that allow guys to have to play. You have to defend that. And individually, we believe that our talent and skill set of our receivers are that much better than yours. That when you get to one-on-one situations, Kyler sitting in the back can make a decision if he gets the time to whichever guy he wants to throw the ball to. And we saw that. He flipped the ball and moved the ball around to everyone. Everyone had more than 1 to 2 catches. So that, to me, lets you know that he's moving the ball and giving guys opportunities. But that, to me, shows a good balance of continuity and, having the guys and the skill set. And that makes defenses has to play you guys head-to-head. If they don't, they're going to leave zones and guys are going to sit down and check downs. But at the end of the day, guys make plays.
We talked about it on Friday's show, and to the dismay of our fantasy enthusiasts out there when it comes to Kyler Murray, this is who he wants to be. 5 carries, 20 yards, rushing touchdown, 4 passing touchdowns. I guarantee you, based on his comments, if you came up to him today, that's where he wants to live. And it's a stark contrast to a year ago when they were in San Francisco and they won, but the offense was completely different. It was Kyler's legs and Hopkins playing hero ball. He had over 160 yards, and that was a great win. This was such a more complete win, especially offensively. You look at Chase Edmonds, James Conner, both eclipsing 50 yards rushing. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, 80-plus yards. Christian Kirk, 70-plus yards. Somebody else who's in a contract year, 2 touchdowns today. Rondale Moore almost was 70 yards. They have just so many different ways now that they can beat you. And I just think that while it's great to see the highlight plays, I think Kyler would rather use his legs on the design runs, in the goal line where he's untouched, of course, and then when he has to use it, the Russell Wilson-esque plays, of course, that highlight play on third down that really kind of changed the dynamic of the game to Rondale Moore for his first completion. Kyler doesn't want to go off for 60, 70, 80 yards rushing. That's not his game, and if you want Kyler and all 5'8", 5'9", 5'10" of him, I think he's 5'10", to be able to last for 17 games.
I think he'd be insulted by that comment.
He's 5'10". If you want him to last for the entire season, then you should be happy with the fact that, 5 carries, modest 20 yards, but they scored 38 points. That, to me, just shows you that if he has to beat you that way, so be it, but he'd much rather be considered a pocket passer.
Yeah, Kyler said over and over again that his legs should be a luxury. Last year, he wasn't allowed to have that luxury, though, just with the way that the offense, I mean, they needed him to take off and force something to happen to be able to move the chains. But I want to say I was skeptical that could happen because they have all the right pieces, and that's something that they've continued to say over and over again is we have all the pieces that we need. But that was another great thing. He got what he wanted, and the offense has definitely improved in that way.
Look, knowing what we know and knowing that we have not seen much of our team in the preseason and all the question marks that was there coming off a tough last, as JV always says, look, last year we started out great and then we farted at the end of the season really bad. And then, really, really bad. But then coming into the season –
I don't know if I used those exact
I think you said farted. Yeah,
I said they wet the bed.
They wet the bed, a wet fart.
That's somehow
so they sharded. They sharded since they sharded at the end of the season of last year. It was really horrible to watch. It was horrible to watch, but
yes,
and I think that's a beautiful thing to watch and see what we was able to come together with. We got the names, they have the talent. But there's always that one question mark of execution. And that today was on display.
Yep.
That was today on display, execution. And that's something you can be proud of. Did he make a bad throw? There were so many throws he made that was absolutely fabulous throws in small windows.
Yeah.
And that to me that's the arm that we paid for. That's the first round draft pick of the Oakland A's as a pitcher. And then he said, no, I'll come and be an NFL quarterback. And that guy now is the guy that we know he has all the throws. He can make them. And he has the legs. Like you said, it's a luxury. And to watch our offense be in a position where that many people touched the ball and you had limited amount of turnovers and you felt like you had control.
Yeah.
It didn't seem like we was rushing or trying to force stuff. And guys seemed like they had windows and they were open. And if you make great catches, you make great catches. And if he made the right throws at the right time, guys were sitting open. And then they can let the athletic ability work, and it did. And I thought that was absolutely something really pretty to watch. That's an offense. That's how offenses should look.
Absolutely. And if you ask, I'm sure Kyler Murray, the one throw he's going to remember is his interception.
Absolutely.
And he'll want to improve on that. He said he wanted to reduce his turnovers. He had 12 interceptions last year, and if he's throwing 4 touchdowns, you can live with 1 or 2 INTs. Tom Brady had 2 picks the other night on Thursday Night Football, but that's a proud Tennessee franchise that they absolutely embarrassed today. That's a team that's been in the postseason. They were in the AFC title game 2 years ago. They added Julio Jones. I think they've got their own issues compounded by the fact that they lost their offensive coordinator. They lost a couple key pieces of personnel. But I just think that this is the most, and I'm not just saying this, I'm trying to be objective. This is the most impressive performance of any team so far this weekend. You look at what the Niners did. They played the Lions, right? Seattle was favored to beat Indianapolis. The Cardinals were an underdog on the road on the Eastern time zone where they've had so many headaches historically. And to come out and have a performance where, we were sitting here watching the game. After the first quarter, the game was not in doubt. They crept back in, got it down to, low double digits, but never did they get it down to single digits. So I just, to me, I'm very encouraged by the fact that this team kept their foot on the gas.
Yeah.
And the biggest question moving into next week is how will they respond? But again, that's why you brought in Rodney Hudson. That's why you brought in J.J. Watt. And because of the fact that they know last year they let that golden opportunity slip away.
So how concerning 8 penalties for 59 yards that got better as the game progressed. But man, when I think the Cardinals were lucky to come away with points on that first offensive possession, just penalty after penalty after penalty. And to start that way, it's that you're coming off a year where you're the most penalized team in the league. That was frustrating to watch, but again, they shored things up as the game progressed.
Yeah, I think that was just the factor of not playing many reps in the preseason. We talked about that Friday night on our show. The fact that all 4 starting receivers hadn't played together. You saw an instance of Kirk and Hopkins running into each other. or AJ Green, I should say. AJ Green had a couple instances of holding. I think just live reps with this offense. And I think, if we're being fair here, a couple of those penalties could have gone either way. So I credit the coaching staff for making the necessary adjustments second quarter and on. And that's the kind of team I expect to see next week against Minnesota. I think it's also bears repeating that they didn't have live fans last year. It's the first time they've had live fans in 2 years.
Absolutely. That's always on the table. When you haven't been in, live rounds change everything. We talked about preseason and why it's so important, because you have to have those live rounds. You have to have that mentality of coming into a game, getting yourself ready to play against an opponent you haven't practiced against, or getting your mindset ready. Where's my wife? Where's my mom in the stands? This is live TV. These are real bullets that are out here right now. And I think that's understandable. But I'll back up and I'll say the leadership on the table.
Yeah.
You absolutely right in crediting the coaches. But I'm gonna say also the guys on the field have to get that mentality. You know what? Hey, calm down, relax. Someone's in the huddle saying something. Maybe if we had the audio to that, you'll hear somebody say something that says, "Hey man, calm down, relax. It's okay. We got it." And I think that is something that we do that all the time when in the huddle. And when you see guys that are nervous, we got some guys that haven't played together and they haven't had a lot of time. But to watch these guys overcome it, the second half was definitely a totally different team mentally. There was limited amount of mistakes, so I think that is the part of the growth and having that leadership in the right spots. Our center will definitely say something to his offensive line. He's a general. He's got to say something. He'll tell these guys, "Hey, get on point, get on board what we're doing." Kyle will say, "Hey, what am I doing wrong? Am I slowing? How are my cadences? Am I going red 80? Ready, set, hut? Am I going red 80? Ready, set, am I messing you up on my cadence? So, let me figure that out." And somebody will say something, and they'll make those adjustments. And looking at the second half, we can see that they did that.
Even though the Cardinals were considered the underdogs, I think we all actually picked them to win. So just a reminder, you can still download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Using the code PHNX, you're going to get $200 free bets when you place a $1 bet on any game tonight or tomorrow. That is an NFL game. And just a reminder, 21 and over, Arizona only. Gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. Eligibility restrictions apply. Max $50 wager, one per customer. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And Johnny, I know that you are getting an article up on our website now. So if you become a member, you're going to also have access to not only what we talk about on here, you're going to get access to Johnny's articles and other member-only deals. You can check out the t-shirts we have up on PHNXLocker.com, members only Discord. We've got a lot of Cardinals fans chatting on there right now. And if you sign up now, you can get a free t-shirt of your choice from the PHNX Locker, or your first month for just 50 cents, depending on which option you choose. All right, so where do we go from here? I guess, one topic we haven't really talked about, I don't know that it necessarily needs a ton of discussion. Matt Prater's Arizona debut, he did miss a field goal, but overall I wouldn't say there's too much to be concerned about there.
I hate kickers.
Why is that?
I hate kickers.
Well, we were trying to.
Oh my God!
I'm sorry I had to say that, but it is to be. I mean, if you got an over and under, and you need that one kick, and the field goal breaks off being a 2-1, that's great. But to me, I'm like, hey, look, hey, you do your job, and that's the only job you do. There's nothing else you do. No one else is tackling you. No one's touching you. They are the most prima donna guys, better than quarterbacks on the football field.
Hey,
kickers
man,
across the board.
I would rather have Prater than what we saw from Tennessee's
look,
kicker.
I would look that guy. We were where I was
He's gonna
at.
have a job this
Yeah.
week.
We definitely thought that guy was going to be cut without a doubt. Look, he had enough opportunities to overcome the one mistake, so that is a good thing. But the question becomes, if we're going to add, a little salt to his wound, is that if it mattered, would you miss it? Would that guy that missed that field goal?
He's made enough kicks, in my opinion, over the course of his
Johnny
career.
Facts, give it up to me.
Yeah, well, I just selfishly,
facts.
Kirsten and I were watching the game when he missed that field goal, and I just wanted them to eclipse 40 points. They haven't eclipsed 40 points since Bruce Arians has been their head coach. They've never done it under Kingsbury. It's always different when you put a 40 burger on them, right?
Yeah.
That's the term. So maybe next week, but I don't have any concerns about that. Where I do have a little bit of concern is up front on the offensive line. If Kelvin Beachum isn't able to play next week against Minnesota, Justin Murray is the default kind of swing tackle back up at right tackle. You've got Josh Jones playing right guard. I did think the protection held up relatively well today, especially on the interior. They only gave up 2 sacks. And one of those, you can make an argument Kyler held the ball a little too long. But you figure home crowd, you've got the benefit of that next week against Minnesota. If I had to nitpick anything else, it really didn't affect them one way or the other. Xavier Collins played less than I thought he would play. That was just kind of how the game dictated.
I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I think Jordan Hicks looked good. So as long as Jordan Hicks isn't exposed in space and Vance is playing him, Isaiah played the whole game. That's what I want to see. If you're talking about young players to build around and be excited about, Budda Baker, Byron Murphy, Isaiah Simmons all had, I think there were 3 of their 4 leading tacklers, all had passes defended. You talk about hybrid freak players that will help get this team to the next level. Those are homegrown players that the Cardinals need to lean on. And then additionally, if Xavier Collins, you got training wheels on Xavier Collins, I don't have a problem with that. Just don't make him MIA until November. But again, I liked the tempo and the rotation that was dictated. And Marco Wilson, 4th-round rookie quarterback, was in there the first possession. So he's going to play a lot. So if you're looking ahead, this Cardinal draft class with Marco and Rondale Moore almost having 70 yards and Xavier getting 50-60% of the snaps, this is going to be their most active draft class in recent memory.
It's definitely. I think if Tennessee could have got things rolling a little faster, and they could have been more downhill, like they probably wanted to be a little more physical, didn't want the ball to have to be thrown specifically as much as they did. They know we have a high-powered offense that can be explosive.
Yeah.
And big plays can be made down the field. So you probably wanted to keep our offense off the field as much, try to have some clock management. It might have changed what our defensive scheme would have been
Probably
like for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have added probably more beef on the inside, but because they had to get the 3 and 4 wide receivers a lot faster, it probably put Zayman in Mr. Collins in that situation where he couldn't play as much. And I'm okay with the training wheels. Look, the NFL is fast, and there are a lot of things that are happening. What you do in practicing, but what you do in the game is night and day. You know what a deer in the headlights look like just from a simple standpoint in the NFL? Is that you're playing against guys you played with on Madden, and that you're an idol of them. They were your idols. And you knew for a fact what he did. You saw what he did 2 weeks ago against the guy that you thought was a beast and a linebacker. Now you're a linebacker playing against this guy that was a beast that murdered your linebacker guy. And now you got to go against him, and you have to ask that question, can I handle him, or will he treat me just like he just treated Ray Lewis? And you're like, man, he just got murdered, and will he murder me? And I think that's a process where I use these terms because in real battle, that's what it's just like. And when you're watching it on film and you slow it down, you individualize the game, and you can start picking apart guys' technique and what they specifically do to you and what they want to do to you, there are some scenarios that you just can't do anything about. There is nothing their left tackle could do versus Chandler today. Absolutely nothing.
And that's Taylor Lewan, who is he's a former Pro Bowl tackle. I know they said he was a little banged up. Then they put that poor backup in favor of Luan, and things got worse from there, and they had help with double teams, and that freed up lanes for other guys. But, that, to me, Kyler's progression and maturation as a pocket passer in combination of the return of Chandler Jones, those are the 2 biggest takeaways.
I would say this was a best-case scenario, all things considered. They only had 2 preseason games, and we were talking, can week 1 be considered like a third preseason game? Like, they haven't had a whole lot of reps, chances to gel. We knew that penalties were going to be a thing, as the miscommunication a little bit. Very minor. And they didn't just they somehow found a way to win. Thank God they got the win and they'll improve next week. It was a blowout. So in my opinion, all things considered, this was a best case scenario for the Cardinals, and Cardinals fans should be very excited, and Cardinals players should have a ton of confidence on momentum moving forward to the Vikings next week.
I definitely tried to make it a preseason game. I was bowing out maybe if we lose.
You were trying to give them excuses already, and it's not going to be their fault.
I was like gelling and coming together and kumbaya. You was like, screw that, Frank. No. If you take a post to the Valley, no way, we're not going with that. Everything you said last week, man, or Friday, just this past week, Friday, was absolutely on point. You encouraged me so much to believe. And what actually you spoke about manifested. that the Tennessee Titans they were not as great as we thought they were. That the new offensive coordinator wasn't the guy. He wasn't a great offensive coordinator. No. So he's having to gel in the first year. The system that the Tennessee Titans had last year was not the same as this year. They had COVID situations. Tannehill hadn't played a lot. So all the facts and the stats that you brought up last week were just Friday was absolutely amazing, and it manifested itself specifically on Sunday.
I mean, who would have thought? Not only Derrick Henry would be held to his yardage that he had. I mean, you kind of call that, but I also think that Julio Jones was a complete non-factor, and I never thought I'd be saying that. I thought if they would have had, 50, 60 yards from him, that would have been a really good day. I mean, A.J. Brown did what he does and had a couple nice receptions, had that touchdown grab, but outside of that, I mean, he looked out of place. He looked older. The Cardinals' defensive backs looked younger and more athletic. Outside of that one blown coverage that they had downfield where Byron had to make that tackle, I don't remember any wide open plays for receivers. And yeah, you can credit the front seven for the consistent pressure, but I mean, they were breaking up passes.
Yeah, they were.
Budda Baker had a pass broken up in the end zone. So did Byron Murphy. To me, the physicality that this secondary brings now, and again, I don't want to continue to harp on Patrick Peterson and what he's become, but what it was too much finesse play. This secondary, give them credit, was incredibly physical, matched the physicality of the front seven to the point where I think they roughed up the Tennessee receivers, and they were not expecting that.
Julio Jones didn't even have a catch till like a minute 30 left in the first half.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a non-factor. And we were, this is like the big storyline. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones, they're going to totally torch the Cardinals secondary, and that was the opposite of the case.
The leading receiver for Tennessee was somebody called Chester Rogers.
Rogers.
Yeah. Something called Chester Rogers, yeah.
Look, honestly, this is so a little to watch the way our defensive backs performed. I always say, and I've learned this as a receiver in NFL, a DB needs the front seven to create pressure. So therefore, I can do what I'm training myself to do. You don't train to cover 4 and 5 seconds because you're the opposing team quarterback can pat the ball and come off receiver 1, 2, and 3, check down, and then slide to the right and then throw the ball back across the field. I've seen that many times when I was with the Cardinals and our losing moments, and I know what that looks like. So, but you don't train for that. You train to be able to go 1, 2, 3. Break on the ball, 1, 2, 3, break on the ball, or 1, 2, break on the ball. You train yourself that, and that was like defensive timings. As if you look at a quarterback and what his timing has to be with the receivers and how many steps he takes back. Well, the same thing with defense. But when your front seven is getting pressure on your quarterback, it changes his timing. His 3-step drop back has to look like a 2.5. His 5-step drop back has to look like a 4-step because he has to get the ball out that much faster because he knows that Chandler Jones is on the end and coming.
That's
that
right.
Front side wall on the right side of my strong side is pushing pressure because JJ is bringing my guy back. He just changed the line of scrimmage and pulled it back, pushed the guy back 3 yards in front of my face. And I think those are the things that changes the narrative. And then every cornerback out there, they can get a little bit more aggressive. They can be a little more physical. They can put their hands on these guys that we consider to be guys that are game-breaking receivers, and it changes everything. And I think that is, again, when you have the pieces, they begin to complement. Then you get a beautiful puzzle, a beautiful picture. And today, in a lot of ways, that's what we're saying. There were some ugly things, but the pieces that we have became an actual a beautiful picture of what defensive schemes should look like. And I'm excited about our young guys. I'm excited about our old guys and the leadership that's there.
Yeah, and speaking of the leadership, I'd be remiss if we didn't credit Cliff Kingsbury, who I don't think we've complimented yet on this show, who's under...
You did?
When?
Today.
I'm sorry. I was what? No.
I'll give Frank credit. He probably did. Cliff Kingsbury, who's on everybody's hot list, not the good hot list, but the fire hot list, who is now undefeated in openers, tied his first year, won last year at San Francisco, won this year at Tennessee.
It means nothing.
Yeah, well,
he's undefeated, but he's undefeated
in openers. I mean, that's something.
Huge. That's a
Cliff
good
Kingsbury,
start.
who has a target on his back.
I want to see you undefeated in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But let's work with what we got here.
Call him out.
38 points in the opener with a huge target on your back, with everybody putting heat on you, with people, including myself and others around the valley, saying this could be it. If you don't make the playoffs, you're going to lose your job. To me, that tells me everything that I need to know, especially the offensive adjustments they made after those first two possessions when they looked a little out of sync. I mean, we sat here and watched it. His play calling was on point. His use
red
of
zone efficiency.
Absolutely. 4 out of 5 trips came with touchdowns at least. The deep ball was there to Christian Kirk. The intermediate passing game, which was absent last year, his use of Rondale Moore. I am encouraged with what I've seen from Cliff. Now, to your point, it has to be sustainable, but I mean, he was the far superior coach today.
One stat that I just remembered that we didn't even touch on was third down efficiency, going back to the defensive end. So 5 of 14, the Titans on third down. So you can't really do much when you're 5 of 14 on third down. So another just great stat from the defense.
That is the thing that most, when you see guys, they take more pride in getting an offense off the field on third down than anything else. Like that is when they hold their hand up like this here, and then you see the guys running, and they have a ball fist, and they're running like it's fourth down because they know punt team is up. On the sideline, you're screaming, punt team up, and I think and that to me is a highlight of what defense looks like. 5 of 14 is efficient. That is getting your team off, getting the ball back to the offense, giving yourself a chance. I think that these guys play absolutely fabulous today against a team that we thought they got pieces, but they're just not. They don't have what we have, and I like what we have.
To hold an NFL team under 250 total yards in the year 2021. Especially this isn't Houston, this isn't Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. This is a team with maybe AFC Championship aspirations that's loaded up in the offseason. To hold them under 250 yards in today's NFL where everybody gets garbage yards, right? It's the points that matter, but you can have hollow yards night and day. That is exceptional work. This was probably the best defensive performance that we've seen, goodness, maybe since Todd Bowles was here in 2014. I mean, it's been that long since we've seen an effort like this.
Yeah, if you're catching us on YouTube right now, we want to remind you that make sure you never miss out on any of our shows by subscribing to the PHNX Cardinals podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. If you're hearing us on one of those apps, we want to remind you we're also doing a ton of great, awesome content on our YouTube channel, PHNX Sports. So subscribe to that channel. Sign up for alerts every time we drop new videos. And you can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook by following us at PHNX_sports. Guys, closing thoughts. I think we pretty much covered everything, but do we have anything else we want to say?
On to the next week. Like literally on to the next week, because you won a game, you got past that. You went against a team that, you basically dominated. And now it's on to the next week and getting guys. If any guys got hurt, we got to get these guys healthy, getting ready for the next week. We got to make sure the guys don't, go out and try to celebrate and do stupid stuff and get COVID. Then they get into the COVID protocol and they mess things up. It's just one win. Like we said before, we were 6-3, and then next thing you know, we start to shart and poop and the whole rest of the season.
Please not make that a thing.
It was on the table, bro. It was
Johnny,
wet and
apparently
ragged.
you started it.
But they wet the bed, and it was horrible.
I've said a lot of things on air. I promise.
Whether you shart or whether you wet the bed, they're both embarrassing, and you need to
be like my 2-year-old. Pull your pull-up on and get to work. But I echo those comments, and I would also say, what a great welcome home gift to the Valley and to the fans coming back to State Farm Stadium, really for the first time since 2019. Welcome back, Cardinal fans. Your team is 1-0 and just throttled an AFC contender on the road.
So my final thought is I want to read a tweet from Taylor Lewan, who took to Twitter to say, I got my butt kicked, although he didn't say butt, he said the other word, kicked today. No way around that. I let the team and the fans down. Thank you, Chandler Jones, for exposing me. It will only force me to get better. So when you play so well, he said that on Twitter. Taylor Lewan said it on Twitter.
I swear right now, I bet everything. I'm going to follow him, and I know for a fact his homies and the guys in the locker room are going to be like, "What the hell you just do? Why would you say something like that? Like, why would you cower in? That is not the move a player would make just because you're so. Is he getting paid to do Twitter accounts? Is he getting paid to be honest?
Chandler Jones broke the dude down so badly that he took to Twitter to apologize.
Wow, like that blows my mind. Like that is.
It could be a long year in Tennessee with that kind of thing.
I don't know if he's going to be there long. I'm pretty sure. I bet Mike is on his butt cheeks right now. Like, what the hell are you doing? You don't ever tell anybody you did that, because next week the next guy's like, now I swear he's my Twitter. You gonna tweet this now? You gonna tweet this? the next defensive end he plays will be like, now you're gonna put me on your Twitter handle now, right? I'm gonna be your Twitter guy. Tweet this out that I just smacked you in the head. Tweet this out that I kicked your butt, just like Chandler. I'm telling you, I have never seen that where you immediately, and if it's the last game of the season, okay. You got 16 more weeks of somebody now
the game
ready to be on your Twitter handle.
Oh, he pinned it too.
Oh, Jesus.
So now, what
Jesus.
that means, do you know what a pin means?
No,
so
I don't.
What that means is anytime, so tweets will get like lost in a feed every time you do a new tweet. He pinned it to the top, so it's never going to go down. So anytime you click on his page, it's pinned to the top. So that's the first thing you see.
So Ocho Cinco would take a schedule, and he'd flip it, and he'd just write the schedule, and he'd write the DB's names down. And he'll literally check off how many yards he's going to get against DBs. And then he'd put it on in his locker. Now, if a report was going out and you want to do a report on him, or you were a reporter in his locker room, then you could see that. And he'll tell you, what is that about? He'll say, we're playing Dallas this week. I got this guy named Smith and this guy, the other cornerback. So I'm going to probably get 8 catches for 217 yards if CP throws the ball to me. That's what he would say. He said that live. Then he had to back it up. Now I'm saying you're posting of what somebody else did to you, and you pinned it, and now everyone else, like next week, I would be the dude that says, I'm going to be on your Twitter handler. Every time I come against you, tweet this. And then I'd come to the cameras and be like, bro, tweet this. Like, look, tweet. I'm trying to be like Chandler Jones and get tweeted on. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. It's crazy
The Bengal defense today against Minnesota, foreshadowing 8 quarterback hits, 3 sacks. So could only get worse next weekend for whomever's playing left tackle for Minnesota. Just saying.
That's good for the Cardinals. My final thought actually is that we wish Kelvin Beachum a speedy recovery.
Yes.
He's dealing with that rib injury, so we don't really have an update on him just yet, but certainly wish him a speedy recovery. And we'll be back tomorrow with more talking about week 2, Vikings week tomorrow. Have a good one.